Hello, everyone. My name is Sadhana Senanayake, and I will be talking to a number of exceptional women who have made impacts in their own industries and sectors as a part of a series brought to you by the Frederick Naumann Foundation's Female Forward Initiative. Today, we have with us Samadanie Kiriwandeniya. Samadanie is a development professional with cross-disciplinary experience in MSME financing, cooperative banking, gender mainstreaming, and community empowerment. She was a corporate manager of SDB Bank and served the bank as the chairperson of the board for 9 years. She currently serves as the managing director of Sanasa International, the company formed by Sanasa Group. She's also a mother of 2 daughters. Hi, Samadanie. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Sadhana. Nice to be with you all.
Great. So we want to start by just, giving us a bit of an intro into who you are. So can you tell us a bit about your background and what led you to where you are today?
Okay, well, it's a long story, but I'm 52 years old, so there's quite a lot of experiences that I gathered and work that I did, which I don't think we will have time to recapture. But in a nutshell, I studied in sociology. I studied up to my master's. I was in several different countries while I was studying. Especially Sri Lanka, Australia, and Canada. So I gathered a lot of multicultural experience and other perspectives while I was studying sociology. And I worked with some NGOs and then later joined Sanasa movement and worked as the National Tsunami Coordinator in the post-tsunami rebuilding program of Sanasa. Then I worked as the program director of Sanasa campus, strategizing the human resource development and planning of Sanasa movement, and then joined Sanasa Development Bank and worked as the head of marketing and head of international relations in Sanasa Development Bank and as the manager, as a corporate manager. Later, I was invited to join the board. And I joined the board as the deputy chairman, and then later took the post of the chairman and led the bank for 9 years as the chairperson of SDB. Then I retired from the bank and I created my own company to work with Sanasa and also non-Sanasa development organizations, which is Sanasa International. And I'm working as a social enterprise. It's a private sector company, but we are a social enterprise. So we are supporting the building of cooperative enterprises, women's empowerment work, environmental programs, and youth empowerment programs, especially in Sri Lanka. So that's basically what I am right now. And I'm a mother of 2 girls.
That's amazing. Awesome. So you said you studied sociology, right? And I read in a previous interview of yours that you said that social movements have always fascinated you and that you read extensively about revolutions. So was there a part of you that you wanted to inspire some sort of revolution or social movement with the work that you've done?
I'm not really sure. I was, I grew up as a girl of 5 with 5 girls. I mean, we were a 5-girl family, and my mother was a very much feminist, although she doesn't call herself as a feminist. She's a women development worker. That is what she, she's a teacher. She was a teacher, but she also worked intensely with Sanasa movement, developing the capacities of the women who became members of Sanasa. So I was never raised as a girl in my family. None of us were. We were allowed to do whatever we like to do with our lives. We were never pushed by the parents to be into some, structured female role. So I was never happy with what was given to me. I was always pushing things. I was a tomboy when I was growing up. And since at a very young age, I was able to explore other countries and other ways of being. I think I was never fascinated by just being in a box and, being fit into it. So I don't know whether it's the revolution as such, but the need to, push more, to do better and get better things done so that we are more happier. I think that need is what drove me to social movements and to work with people, to work with problems. So problems fascinate me really, and I'm never happy until the problems are solved. So I think that's probably what it is.
That's amazing. So, you said something earlier about, how you you didn't grow up as a boy, right? So that kind of links with my next question, right? Because I also read that you had experience in gender issues management.
I wouldn't say that I grew up as a boy. I grew up as a person. I was never brought up as a girl. That is what I wanted to say, not as a boy.
So basically, there was no like lens of gender when you were growing up.
Yes,
Awesome.
correct.
Great. But that's brilliant because not everybody has that experience in Sri Lanka, especially growing up. So that kind of goes with my next question, which is, you work a lot with rural communities, and you've had, experience in gender issue management, right? So can you just tell us a little bit about the issues you encountered in rural areas and maybe what was done to like overcome them?
I think that there is no gender issue restricted to rural. In fact, if you actually go and work in rural areas, there's more space for women to work. So in my opinion, I think the fact that we associate gender and gender issues and gender problems with rural and poor itself is a very elitist approach to gender. I think in Sri Lanka, the most, biggest gender issues are encountered by middle class, not necessarily rural. Because rural level, yes, of course, because of the structure, which is run mostly again by the middle class. Government officers are middle class people, the NGO people are middle class people, the state officers are middle class, politicians are mostly middle class. So they create the structure within which people have to operate. So the structure itself is gendered. Therefore, people find gendered issues in operating in these structures. But when the need is, life and death kind of a situation, the need to earn money for your family, need to protect your men from hostile military forces, women have come forward in Sri Lanka. Rural women have come forward in Sri Lanka. Rural women have gone abroad in Sri Lanka who had no language and no exposure previously. They had ventured into other countries and earned money, dollars for the country. So there is no gender issue salient for rural. So that I think has to be corrected, that understanding. And if I see the kind of problems that I have encountered, I think the biggest problems are there's no issue of participating in development in the periphery, like all men, women, sometimes youth also nowadays. I think probably if the economy goes like this, even the children will have to participate earning money, like other countries, other poor countries, because we will have to earn more and more and more money to survive in this economy, as how it is now. So because country will not be able to provide all this, free education, free health, free other things. So people will have to continuously get for quality living. They have to buy things from the market. So I think rural level, irrespective of gender or age, people participate, right? But gaining a better job, in the labor market, gaining better political representation in the country, there are a lot of problems, right? So unless we get more women into decision making in this country, I don't think there will be better structures in which more women as well as more men and children can live in a harmonious manner, being heard, and their issues being addressed. So that is where the gender issue is in this country. It's a structural issue, and largely faced by the people in the middle class, especially women in the middle class, who need to, break barriers and, come to decision-making levels. And because they are missing there, large number of women in the lower periphery, not only women, I think children and youth also in the periphery are suffering, because that difference and different perspective is not being absorbed by the country in structures.
That's an interesting observation. So that the structures in the country are what is gendered. So with that, I understand that you're saying that in Colombo and Kandy, like in the cities, the issues that the women are encountering there, which is that they can't take over or like overcome those structures, is having an impact on rural areas. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so in what way, what advice would you give for women who are in like the middle class or in more urban environments? How do we battle those structures then, the gendered structures?
I think one of the biggest issue in Sri Lanka in all structures, it is not only women's development, in other development, agriculture development, water management, any issue, if you take any policy issue, the biggest problem is that people are working in silos, right? Every time that country got a progress in any line, people have worked as a citizen group, like as a group, as a team, as a nation, right? We won the war because of that. Like it's not just the military or one secretary or one president or one group that won the war. Everybody, including the opposition party, supported one objective, that is finishing the war. So we got the war finished, right? Many other aspects of that has to be still addressed, but nevertheless, the actual military, fighting, physical war stopped, right? So in during tsunami, because the country came out of the tsunami disaster, was because everybody worked together. Government created the TAFRAN, the working framework. Like they had the task force that determined the way to engage, and the NGOs got engaged, the people got engaged, civil society got engaged. We came out of tsunami, right? In the same way, I think we will have to work not in silos, like women in politics, women in development, women in media, women in advertising and designing, women in other places cannot work separately. We will have to work as a team, as women of Sri Lanka, to come forward and understand the problems of women. Indian women do that. Many other, if you see the feminist liberation movements in other countries, they have embraced the national issues as a team. So Sri Lankan women's development work, I think, is handicapped because women in NGOs work separately, NGOs among themselves work separately, media women work separately, and then government departments, especially women secretariat that we had. It is politically aligned and had to only operate within a political mandate. So because of that, we were not able to get this issue into a mainstream problem, right? So because of that, different people, settle to their cushioned, secure spaces and do their fights with the structure separately. I think it's high time that Sri Lankan women understand everybody's problem together, right? Have more discussion, more engagement, more collective, engagement, not as individuals, trying to outsmart each other by, becoming model leaders. But I think we should all get together as Sri Lankan women and figure out a way so that at least 50% of us are represented in the parliament, making policies for this country, right? At least, in my opinion, I think at least 60% should be in the Pradesh Sabhas, because that is where we make decisions about our roads, our security in our villages, our children's education, our water, our land. I think women should be more involved in these things in a country. If you look at the family also, if the mother is more involved in decision making in their family, the family progress more, I think. I'm not discrediting the father's role, but fathers have more things to do, like national security of this country should be discussed, debated, I think, by the fathers more. Whereas local securities, I think we should get more involved, because it's the family. Women are the people who raise children. Fathers can't bear children. We still have to bear the children. So we are structured by that. And we have to make sure that we have safe spaces, more peaceful environment to raise our children, who are the next citizens of this country. So we have to be involved. I'm not restricting women into motherhood. We are much more than that, much more. We are full citizens, but we have to figure out a way where we can live more peacefully and happy in this country.
You mentioned fathers, right? So that's why my next question is actually to do with your father, because I think you may have faced, correct me if I'm wrong, that when you took your position and the son is a bank, that there were a few people who are like, oh, it's like she's taking over her father's position. How did you overcome those kinds of discrimination against you? It's kind of unfair, right? For them to say that.
Well, when I joined Sanasa, when I grew up, actually, each time I am the one who followed my father most of the time to different places with him, especially because I love traveling, and my mother didn't like to keep me at home because I used to fight with my sisters. So I went with him and around the country. But when I was traveling with him around the country, people used to ask, so who is going to be the following the footstep of your father? Who will be the next leader? Who is the next Kiriwandeniya? And I somehow thought it's going to be me. So I grew up thinking that it's my responsibility to carry out what my father did, right? And then at one time, when I was growing up as a teenager and as a youth, you always encounter problems with your parent, who you want to imitate, right? So I always had issues with my father, the way he was doing things. While agreeing with what he was committing to, I wasn't really agreeing with the processes, like the way he was driving this. It was very manly, and I was not. So I had problems. So when I joined the management team of the bank, also I observed the way things were happening. And that was mainly because he was embraced as a male, as a leader, as the creator of the bank and the movement, right? So he was already a leader, and so he could lead. And I was always looking for more collaborative, discursive kind of ways of engaging. And I was seen as a non-leader, but a facilitator. Right, so I would ask people, okay, what do you think? How do you think? How shall we do this? And it was understood and interpreted as if I didn't know what I was doing. Right, so it's a different style. So, and plus I was young. I was not from the banking industry. So people at the board who were mature bankers, who were board members of my father, who were scared. They were scared that I would make decisions that may not be practical, that may be immature. So things like that. To some extent, I think it was not really gendered as such. It was me, like young and female, and they had never worked under a female before. They had worked not only under a man, but under a person who created the movement, right? So even as a man, I think it is difficult to replicate that role. So for me, because I had the name, I had some recognition, but I was not necessarily recognized as a leader. So I had to earn it. I had to earn it. I had to learn very hard um, everything that I didn't like. Like I never liked to learn economics, accounting, financial management, banking. I had to learn very fast. I had to, in order to understand what was coming to my table, to make some meaningful, even facilitation at the board, I needed to know the real numbers, the stories behind the numbers, the problems faced by the management when they present these numbers, and the repercussions of these numbers on the shareholders and the country. So those things I had to learn. And in addition to that, I had to learn the ways to engage with people, negotiate with people, do diplomacy with people rather than fight, right? Which was the way I used to push things. So I had to mature very quickly on the job. In addition to that, of course, there were a lot of other, struggles like union issues and other issues that were developed with, with the bank being listed and structures had to be changed. The bank had to be made double in size in order to retain the license because of central bank regulations. So a lot of things were there. So I think partly it was gender, partly because it was my lack of experience that created such situations. So in retrospect, I think both parties had to grow to embrace each other. Like the management, which was largely male at that time. Now, of course, SBB has more female managers, but those days it was largely male, and the board members were also largely male. They had to engage with the female leader. I had to engage with more mature, more experienced male figures, and communicate my position and my policies to them. So in that engagement, I think both parties grew.
You mentioned a couple of things that really stuck out to me. So there was like, when you said that when you took over, there was a sense where you were asking them like, okay, so what do you think? Like you were asking them their opinion. And I think that is something that it's almost inherently against the natural Sri Lankan structure of like corporates, because it's like whatever the boss says goes. Like you can't even think about even talking back or like even giving your opinion. But I think moving forward, again, it links back to what you said earlier about how women can, make changes to these gendered structures, is that if there's communication and if leaders, even if there's so many male leaders, let's be honest, right, compared to women, they need to be open to communicate, right? And they need to be open to change. But Sri Lankans are very like against change, right? That's what I've noticed anyway. This change is a bad thing.
Yes, correct.
How do you think that, they have to be open to a dialogue? So do you think that there needs to be more of a, how do we create a situation where there's more of a conversation, where people are open to a conversation? What do you think?
I think we have to make our conversation heard rather than trying to engage in a conversation with the people who are not ready to listen to us, right? So that is the first thing. First, we have to show that there is a conversation to be engaged with, right? There are issues that we are talking about, that we are serious about, that we are meaningfully engaged with, right? And that we are ready to not let go, right? We are ready to push forward. So women have to get organized first. Women have to get organized, get engaged with each other, get a women's movement present, right, in this country. When that happens, people will not be able to ignore us, right? So I think that is what we have to do. We have to learn hard. We have to know everybody's struggle. We can't just, highlight just our struggle and trying to get a deal out of the structures with by engaging with few male figures that we can have contacts with, right? Or we just have to get our act together as a team. So, and then, women have money in this country, women have knowledge in this country, women have will in this country. women have creative capacities in this country. Why do we have to engage with other structures? We just have to talk with among ourselves. We can do much more with ourselves, among us, right? And when that is showing results, people will see that there are smart ways of doing things, right? We don't have to, destroy the environment, disrupt social structures to get few dollars to the country. We can progress as a nation better. So for that, I think 50% of the population is waiting and expecting that to happen, without getting properly engaged. So, in my opinion, I think we have to put the blame on ourselves also.
Okay, that makes sense. So basically, Sri Lankan women themselves have to stop waiting for something to happen. They have to make it happen. I agree with that. I agree with that. So do you think that we are still kind of a long way from achieving like proper gender equality, or are we on the way there, or do we have some ways to go? What do you think?
Well, see, I don't know. Sometimes we are going in cycles, sometimes we are going in a linear way. But I think social changes do not necessarily happen in that kind of planned way. We do things in different places and suddenly things happen. See what happened with our unique musician now in the country, right? Or the what is it? The Everest climber. So all of a sudden, women made change in this country, right? Such changes also can happen, and but sometimes there might be other things, that needs to happen for us to continuously embrace these, quick, sudden, bursts of energy to show that there are, very interesting, very creative, very talented, very capable Sri Lankan women, but we have to continuously, create a platform where more Sri Lankan female politicians emerge, more Sri Lankan female corporate heads emerge, more business leaders emerge, more structures are, better facilitated in rural sectors for women to, survive and protect their land and water and children better. So, so we have to work consistently and continuously and collaboratively on the women's issues in the country until we push structures to get a better structure, which is ours, not politically created for a party's needs, or not created by a project supported by some bilateral program, right? We have to get the Sri Lankan women's supportive structures established in Sri Lanka by Sri Lankan women working together, right? Meanwhile, we have to embrace new talents in Sri Lanka by getting them as case studies for other more Sri Lankan women to come forward. So it's a culture that needs to be built and a program that needs to be built, not by projects, not by NGOs, not by government, but by Sri Lankan women working together.
That's a really interesting take on it, because I think that everyone's just kind of waiting for something to happen instead of like taking the initiative and moving forward. So I think that's a really profound bit of advice for Sri Lankan women for sure. So on to my last question. Do you have any like advice for any young girls who are looking to you as a career path? Like, what advice would you give them?
Don't look into me. Advice. Look into yourself. Because ultimately, I think, we are human beings, we are citizens of Sri Lanka. We should be happy. So we have to find a way for us to be happy. And for that, we have to first figure out what will make us happy. right? So once you figure that out, not what will make everyone else around you happy and you being depressed, right? Because mental health is a big issue in Sri Lanka these days. And even teenagers are finding it difficult to cope with this pressure, this expectation that is coming from social media and education system. So I think you have to really look at, what will make you happy, and start looking at structures and spaces and people who will help you. And one thing I can guarantee all the Sri Lankan women is that if you really look for support, there's enough support. There's enough support by the government organizations. Despite all we say, there is enough support still. There are good government officers in your areas who will be able to support you. There are good non-government organizations who will support you. There are individual women who will support you. So, but you can't just sit and wait for someone else to help you achieve your dream. You have to look for it. In Sinhala, there's a saying, "Tattu karannata dora yave." I don't know what the saying is in English. I'm sure there is a saying. Sadhana, you might know that saying. But the first advice is look into yourself to find out what makes you happy. Then look outside for support service, which will help you achieve that.
That's great, amazing. Thank you so much, Samadani. I learned a lot today, so thank you for taking the time to speak to us. And I'm sure a lot of people will gain a lot of knowledge from this conversation, as I have. So thank you for your time again.
It was a pleasure engaging with you.